This week I locked myself in a dark room, hid under a blanket, and listened to the new FKA Twigs album Magdalene. While hiding from the demonic forces Twigs was obviously conjuring up, I managed to form an opinion on the album. For those of you who don't know, FKA Twigs is a singer-songwriter from the United Kingdom. Magdalene isn't her first album. About 5 years ago she dropped LP1. Most people have probably heard of her from her A$AP Rocky collaboration. She's the female vocals on Fuck Sleep. She also does the strange little vocal sounds throughout the song. And that's honestly a common trope from her. They're like ad-libs, but a little unsettling and creepy, which are two words I would use to describe FKA Twigs and her music. Now, of course, these aren't necessarily bad things. She isn't letting some forced persona affect the quality of her music. After getting fairly introduced with FKA Twigs, I've come to the conclusion that the personality represented in the music she makes is pretty accurate to her actual personality, which is, as I said before, a little unsettling and creepy. And I'm alright with that. It's not like it was a huge surprise. After watching the music video for Cellophane, we all know what we were getting into. I mean, what's normal about a three-faced dragon made of metal throwing a pole dancer into the abyss of peanut butter? But let's not let the out-of-left-field visuals of the track distract us from how excellent it actually is. Twigs has the voice of a soprano angel, which sounds like something she would name her child. And on Magdalene, her vocal performance does not falter once. I mean, it kinda wasn't allowed to, seeing that Twigs only had one feature throughout a 40-minute time span. And trust me, we will be getting into Future's contribution to this album soon enough. But for now, let's focus on the woman of the hour, Miss Twigs. I'll start by talking about this album cover. This is one of the most nightmarish things I've seen all year, but at the same time, it's a perfect visual for the record, because right off the bat, we are met with Thousand Eyes, a track that transitions from burning ballad to an overwhelming interdimensional kidnapping of my eardrums in about 3 minutes. The buildup of grimy bass drums paired with subtle piano keys is what really caught my attention. You know, before the music equivalent of being thrown down a dark well kicked in. I think the brevity of this moment makes it stand out a lot more. After about a minute into the breakdown, Twigs returns to the slow-moving chorus to finish out the track. Repetition is pretty heavy throughout this album. In a way, it reminds me of the Solange album that dropped earlier this year. Twigs becomes fixated on certain words or phrases, and those become the focal points of tracks. In this case, the song continues to reference something with 1,000 eyes awaiting you. Not you specifically, put the knife down. No, keep the knife, because you're gonna need it for track 2. This seems to be a lot of people's favorite track on the album. I personally can't stand the vocal effect for the first leg. It's a little too distorted and grating for my liking. However, I do think the actual singing portions on the song are fantastically beautiful. And yes, I do understand the whole back and forth thing she's doing. It's clever, I just don't like the way the grittier portions of the song came out. The instrumentation seems a little clunky and directionless on these portions, while on the singing portions, it seems to fit a little more with her vocals. And the way the song ends does give me mixed emotions on how I'm supposed to feel, which is fine, because my answer is almost immediately answered by the next song, Sad Day. A song that goes back to the repetition I brought up earlier. The Make-A-Wish on My Love hook is certainly the earworm to look out for here. However, this beat is absolute dumpster juice. I am sorry for anyone who really liked this track, but its instrumental was bad enough to keep me away from it completely. It takes all the bad aspects of Home With You and makes an entire song out of it. Some of the sounds being used actually remind me of tracks I've heard from Igloo Ghost and sometimes even Flume, just done incoherently. Okay, let's talk about Future. I will say that the first 20 seconds of Holy Terrain are hard as hell, and Future is partially responsible for that, so props to him. As the track goes on, it certainly isn't one of my favorite Twigs performances on the album. It's not terrible, I just find some of the portions of her chorus to be a little uninteresting. She still brings a pretty impressive vocal talent to the track. Where this song really falls apart though, is the Future verse on the back end. Future has some questionable lyrics on this portion. Play with Snakes and Balmain might be my personal favorite. Future just pushes the track further into mediocrity and definitely should have said less here. But after Holy Terrain, the greatness of this album is no longer in question. Starting with Mary Magdalene, every song from here on out is pretty fantastic. In Mary Magdalene, FKA Twigs uses subtlety like a deadly weapon. The instrumental here is toned down heavily compared to the previous tracks. However, it manages to say so much more. Breakdowns after choruses are so digestible, but still super weird and interesting. Lyrical content sees a return to form as FKA Twigs gives a cryptic philosophy on a woman's role, using Mary Magdalene as a key character in her story. The ending minute of this song is one of the most impressive displays of instrumentation on the entire record. It then moves on to my personal favorite track on the album, Fallen Angel. While I was liking the sweet and passionate vocals throughout previous tracks, the aggression brought on to Fallen Angels is just too amazing to gloss over. Despite the first few seconds reminding me of the Carter's Ape shit, the beat is my favorite on the album, with vocal samples that even sound a little Kanye inspired, and Twigs' already strange creative choices. The instrumental does well to match her angry delivery, which is the best aspect of the track. FKA Twigs sounds like she is just dogging the shit out of an ex-lover, And everything you already liked about the track come back in the last leg as this matched together mix of greatness. Winding down on the next track, Mirrored Hearts gives some of the most emotionally gripping lyrics on the album. Not to mention FKA Twigs returning to a more impressively sweet vocal delivery. She sings of heartbreak, being reminded of your own loneliness while watching other couples. You know the song wouldn't be complete without some instrumental breakdowns being thrown at us like a bus. The album finishes up with Daybed and Cellophane. Both great songs, but I do caution that Daybed is somewhat of a slow burn. The swelling ambience in the background is enough to give the song depth. It just takes a while to really get going. Aside from a few trip-ups in the first half, I do think this album is pretty fantastic. The lyrics and delivery are very emotional and intimate, and I have noticed that to be a common trope for FKA Twigs. You don't exactly know how, but the album is going to hit you in the feels in a couple different ways. Her brand of creativity may come across as fake deep and pretentious from someone who isn't really paying attention, but I would argue that these creative choices are just representations of her actual personality, which I think is pretty neat. Anyways, that's what I think of the album. Tell me what you think. Thanks, and have a great day.